CISO Choice Awards Vendor Recognition with Richard Stiennon.
Hi, I'm Richard Stiennon, and I'm talking with Jonathan Halstuch, who is the CTO and co-founder of RackTop Systems. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And congratulations again on your recognition in the CISO Choice Awards. Jonathan, such a good topic to talk about today is what RackTop does, which is basically data protection. But it's funny, it's in the both senses of data protection. The IT security people think encryption when they hear data protection. Data storage people think backup and recovery when they hear data protection. Tell me how RackTop brings those together.
So we do it all, end-to-end security, from the endpoint to us, but it's offering a data-centric zero trust approach to protecting your data and providing data security across the spectrum. And the recent CISA zero trust maturity model calls out data as the fifth pillar. And I think that's important to realize that you have to do all those things to be successful. And so when we talk about zero trust and data security, a good analogy would be the credit card industry, where you get a credit card and then you go use the card, and the bank determines if they're going to allow that transaction to go through based on, is it your normal spending pattern, time of day, location. And if they believe it, they let it go through. If they don't, they make you prove it's you and you want the transaction to go through. We're doing the same thing for file operations. We're evaluating trust based on each file operation. And so that gets away from that implicit trust model to a dynamic trust model, where every time you're trying to open a file, read a file, we're evaluating, is this a normal IP? Is this a normal amount of file activity, a normal behavior? And if we believe it is, we will allow it to go through. And we can also alert on suspicious activity or actually block a user and their IP from accessing data until it can be investigated. So we can actually block something like a ransomware attack in real time before it does damage.
When I hear the name RackTop, I think of data centers and appliances, 1U, 2U, et cetera. What's the actual configuration of your solution?
So we have very flexible deployment models. You can deploy the software in a variety of manners in the same software and manage it from the same UI. And we can deploy it as a virtual machine in a SAN gateway mode, where we sit in front of existing enterprise block storage and connect via fiber channel or iSCSI. Or we can sell you a traditional network appliance with a direct attached disk. And we can do, support both all flash and hybrid models. And they're completely interoperable. And we have, customers that buy all the form factors and have them work to meet their operational needs.
Can you find a place to fit in at companies that already have a huge, EMC storage system, for all their terabytes of data?
Yeah, that's the nice thing, is that we have the ability to sit on top of or in front of existing storage capacity. So we could even run as a virtual machine within your existing hyperconverged infrastructure or virtualized infrastructure, or in front of the enterprise storage. And so really it gives you the flexibility to fully depreciate the assets you already have, but gain cyber storage capabilities on top of that. And cyber storage is a new category that Gartner announced that we're leading in, that gives you active protections of the data. And so we can take existing assets you might have that don't have the encryption or the data protection capabilities you need or visibility, and add that by putting us in front of it or on top of it.
So not rip and replace, which is a hard sell.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like it. When you invest in security, you should be just investing in the security part, not buying all the other stuff.
Right. And we can also allow customers that have a cloud strategy to leverage the cloud either as a cloud first strategy, or to tier data to the cloud or replicate data to the cloud securely, because we allow you to encrypt the data before you put it in the cloud with key encryption keys the customer or organization controls.
This last week, I learned of a ransomware target that was able to get back, most of the data they needed and rebuild things. But it turned out cloud environments are super dynamic, and they had these configuration files that change every minute. And so they got, they restored from a backup they had from several days before, but they didn't have the most current configurations. Is there a way to identify critical files like that, make sure that they're backed up minute to minute?
Yeah, so the benefit of our architecture and having the data live on us and us being in the middle of the data plane is that we're constantly evaluating trust. As I mentioned, we have snapshots that are immutable, and like a DVR, keep a rolling version of those file changes. So when we detect suspicious or malicious activity, we can actually put holds on those snapshots and point out the files that were changed by that suspicious account or from that host, and then show that to the administrator so that you're not guessing what version of the file is the right one. We can instantaneously roll you back to the pristine version of that file before the suspicious activity. Or if somebody either by mistake or purposely deletes a lot of files, those files will exist in the snapshot that we can recover instantaneously as well.
Cool. When a customer comes to you, do they usually engage you for, hey, we've identified our crown jewels and we want to protect those first? Or do they have a broader scope?
It depends. There's definitely both ways. Some customers want to protect the crown jewels and they want to start off and then kind of that traditional approach where start, land, and expand. And then there's others that have major modernization projects where they're looking to kind of replace everything, or they don't have a good way to know where the crown jewels are and what is important. The good news is once you do start to migrate to us, we give you the tools and visibility to see who's accessing those files. So you can see, hey, who's the community of interest that access these folders and files? We've dealt with a lot of customers where they're not sure who uses those files or they don't have the tools to see that. But with ours, user behavior analytics, you'll know right away when was the last file that was touched, or sorry, when was the last time that file or folder was even accessed or touched, and who are the people that did it. So if you do have data that is sitting out there that's sensitive but not touched for 90 days or a year, you can make decisions about maybe locking that down so it's not widely exposed and reducing your risk ahead of time.
Yeah, I understand the need for the crown jewels approach, but it always worries me because, you know, a big oil and gas exploration company thinks that their oil and gas data is the crown jewels. And yet maybe the crown jewels is, you know, the email server that somebody wants to corrupt or get access to, or just something they don't know, because the hackers have totally different ideas about what's important to them.
That's right. Yeah, it's hard to understand sometimes. It takes a lot of planning and knowledge to get your hands around what data exists there and what data is used for these critical services you're using to deliver, you know, customer service or whatever operational. So it, you know, we really stress on protecting both the primary copies of data and the backup copies of data so that you can quickly restore your operation, right? You want to detect suspicious or malicious activity fast and early, and you want to return to normal service as quickly as possible. And we're able to do that by protecting the primary data, not just offering a backup or recovery solution that's going to allow you to potentially recover back to a particular point in time. And that's why you're seeing these ransomware attacks take a very long time to recover from, you know, 9 days plus versus minutes.
Yeah. Give me a feel for the ideal or the sweet spot for customer size or, you know, data usage, some way to measure them.
So typically it's, you know, it typically ends up being a medium-sized organization with, it doesn't necessarily have to be a lot of data, but the good news is the same solution can scale up to the very large enterprise type organizations with many, many petabytes of data. You know, you can buy just a terabyte of software, you know, usable capacity and a subscription version license. So it does, it can work, you know, even for the small organization, you know, and you can host it in a cloud where you don't have any infrastructure. It just has to be kind of an organization that uses some sort of shared file structure, shared file storage for their organization.
And I've got to ask, because it seems like everybody, especially in the medium enterprise, is moving to Azure cloud services from Microsoft. And of course, there's a lot of data sharing there. Can you integrate with that?
Yep. So we can deploy within Azure or AWS, and we even have some customers for redundancy that have an instance in Azure and an instance in AWS, plus a physical appliance where they're replicating between all three. So they have, you know, true redundancy and backup protections.
Wow, real multi-cloud.
That's right.
I hear about it, but I never hear real instances of it. This has been great, Jonathan. I want to thank you so much. And now we know a lot more about RackTop.
Thanks for having me.
Stay tuned for more from CISO's Connect.